Let's review capitalization and punctuation rules. Be sure and add the examples to your notes. Capitalization. The use of capitalization is based on standard rules that are important for clear communication of written language. Capital letters serve to focus attention on specific words for emphasis. Take a look at Will Smith. He says, breath mints, breath mints, breath mints. Thinking about this meme is going to remind you of the word mints. The M stands for months and days. For example, July or Monday. The I is the word I. No matter where the word I is in the sentence, it must be capitalized. For example, my mom and I talked last night. N. These are names of specific people, places, and things. Like James is a specific person, it's capitalized. Or Mexico is a specific place, it's capitalized. Just remember, you do not capitalize seasons. So I can't wait to go to Mexico this summer. Mexico is capitalized, but summer is not. T is for titles. For example, Dr. Khan. Notice the D in doctor is capitalized. In this case, it's written as an abbreviation, but even if I wrote out the whole word, it would still be capitalized because doctor is his title. So for example, if I said, I went to the doctor, doctor is not capitalized because that could be any doctor. But when I say I went to Dr. Khan, the D is capitalized because it is his title. Same thing with the second example, Coach Barger. Coach is used as her title. In this case, Coach should be capitalized. Again, if I said, I spoke to my coach, or I spoke to the coach, coach is not capitalized. But if I say, I spoke to Coach Barger, the C is capitalized because I'm using that as her title. The S is for the start of sentences. We know that we always capitalize the first word in every sentence. These are the rules for capitalization that you're reminded of when you think of the word mints. Make sure for each rule that you jotted down an example on your notes. Another rule for capitalization is that we capitalize religions. For example, my grandmother is Catholic. Notice that the C in Catholic is capitalized. Now let's talk about how we capitalize proper adjectives. This includes specific names for people, specific places, company names, titles, nationalities, religions, months, days of the week, all of that. Even when it's used as an adjective, we still capitalize it. So take a look at the example. Our Italian cousin rented a Mustang convertible. In this case, the first noun is cousin. The word Italian is an adjective. It describes the cousin. But because Italian is a nationality, it's capitalized. The second noun in the sentence is convertible. What kind of convertible is it? A Mustang convertible. Mustang is a name brand, so it is capitalized. So the rule here is that we capitalize proper adjectives. On your notes, jot down Italian cousin and Mustang convertible as your examples. We also capitalize the first words in quotations, even if the quotation isn't at the beginning of the sentence. So take a look at the sentence. We whispered in her ear, they saw your tweet. So the word they is capitalized because it's the beginning of a quote. Even though it's not the beginning of the whole sentence, it doesn't matter. All quotes start with capital letters. If you look at the example, you can think of this as a speech bubble, right? There's the speaker, it's the boy, and in the speech bubble are the words that he's saying. They saw your tweet. That's his sentence. That's why the T gets capitalized, because it's the beginning of his sentence. It's the beginning of the quote. If you write a letter, you finish your letter with what's called a closing. You want to remember to capitalize the first word of the closing in the line above your signature. Remember that you only capitalize the first word. So notice that the Y in your is capitalized. You don't need to capitalize friend. You only capitalize the first word. Now this part of the letter is called the closing. Your friend. Then we put the comma and then the signature where you sign your name. Just remember that you capitalize the first word in the closing of a friendly letter. Go ahead and jot down this example now. Take a look at this meme. What change needs to be made in the meme? He says, "No one messes with my churros." It's an authentic Spanish dessert. Notice that the word Spanish is written in lowercase. The S in Spanish should be capitalized because it's a nationality. Look at this example. "I'm super, thanks for asking." I could be an astronaut, or I could just steal the moon. Notice that astronaut is written with a capital A. It should be lowercase because this could be any astronaut. The word astronaut in this sentence is a common noun. Now, just as a reminder, if I used astronaut as someone's title, it would be capitalized. So if I said astronaut Samaniego and astronaut was the title, right, that was my title, then it would be capitalized. But the way it's used in this sentence, it is a common noun, so it should not be capitalized because it could be any astronaut. Now let's take a look at some punctuation rules. A semicolon. A semicolon is used to connect two complete sentences. Remember, we learned that this is one way to legally combine two complete sentences. Cody drives a Jaguar, semicolon, Blake drives a Porsche. These are two independent clauses, and we're combining them with a semicolon. A colon is used to introduce a list. Look at the example. Julia wanted to see 3 cities in Italy: Rome, Florence, and Venice. The colon is used here to introduce the list. Be sure and jot down the definition or the examples for each of these. There are only 2 reasons we use apostrophes: for contractions and possessions. When we contract 2 words, we shrink them into 1 word. Whenever we leave out letters, we mark that with an apostrophe. It's almost like we took a scalpel and cut those letters out, and we close the wound with a tiny stitch, the apostrophe. So look at the examples. Don't. We have the words do not, and we take out the letter O and replace it with an apostrophe. The second example is he's. We have the 2 words he is, we take out the I and replace it with an apostrophe. The other reason that we use apostrophes is for possessions. Possessions mean that something belongs to someone. Use this process to test to see if it's a possessive. Insert the words of the in between the 2 words. Flip the position of the 2 words, then read it and see if it sounds like a possession. For example, the dog's bowl, the bowl of the dog. Yes, it's showing that the bowl belongs to the dog. It's showing ownership, so that apostrophe is in the correct place. Look at the second example, 3 dogs' bowls. Now in this example, notice that the apostrophe is after the S. That's because it's the bowls of the 3 dogs. Dogs is plural. This is what we call a plural possessive. Dogs has the S at the end already because it's plural, But when we want to make it possessive, we add the apostrophe to the end. Look at the third example, children's naps. This is an example of a plural word, children, meaning more than one child, that doesn't end in S. So in this case, we go ahead and add the apostrophe S to show that it is possessive. The last example is a little bit tricky. The word Texas is a singular noun. There's one Texas, but it ends in an S. In this case, we do add the apostrophe and the additional S to show possession. Listen to how it sounds. Texas's skies. You can hear me make that second S sound. That's different than 3 dogs' bowls. I don't say 3 dogs' bowls. So you have to listen to how it sounds for where the apostrophe goes. Focus on the noun by itself and then adding the apostrophe or the apostrophe S to show possession. Just remember, we never, ever, ever use an apostrophe as a plural. 3 dogs doesn't get an apostrophe. 20 teachers doesn't get an apostrophe. We also don't use an apostrophe for verbs that end in S. She goes to our school. There's no apostrophe in goes. That verb already ends in an S. Go ahead and record these notes and examples on your notes page. What change needs to be made in the meme? It's time to eat all the cookies. Cookies is plural, meaning more than one. It's not a possessive, so there should not be an apostrophe. The world's best superhero has arrived. This is showing possession. It's who is the best superhero? It's the world's best superhero. World is a singular noun, so it should get an apostrophe and S. It's the best superhero of the world. There's a good chance we weren't invited. Look at the word theirs. Theirs is a contraction for the 2 words there is. So there should be a comma for that missing letter that we took out. Remember to stitch up that word where you made the cut. You're putting an apostrophe to replace the I. Now let's talk about commas. One way that we use commas is to show what goes together. Commas separate items in a list, also called items in a series. They had snow, comma, rain, comma, and sleet. That last comma after rain is optional. You don't have to put it, but you can put it just to be sure. The next reason that we use commas is in a friendly letter. Remember that there are 2 kinds of letters, informal friendly letters and more formal business letters. For the friendly letters, we start with a greeting followed by a comma. This is called a salutation or an opening. So whenever you're writing to someone on paper or digitally, even an email, if you begin with a greeting, it's correct to follow that greeting with a comma. Dear John, comma. The third reason that we use commas is in an appositive. An appositive is a way to rename something right after you say it. We put commas before and after an appositive. So how do you know if it's an appositive? Well, if you read the sentence without the appositive, you'll see it would still make sense. Miss Petru will be right with you. That part, our principal, is extra information. We can take that out. Some appositives, like my friend John or my sister Sally, don't need commas, so be sure and listen to the sentence. If you pause, use the commas. Now let's talk about commas after a beginning phrase or clause. Sometimes in a sentence, if you look for the main subject and verb, you find them not at the beginning, but after a group of words. If these groups of words would not stand alone as a sentence, then they are called phrases or clauses. They should be separated from the main part of the sentence by a comma. If you listen to the sentence aloud, you hear a pause, and that is where the comma goes. Why does a group of words not have to stand alone as a sentence? Well, can you join 2 sentences with a comma? Never. But after any group of words that's less than a comma, definitely. use a comma. We talked about this when we talked about a woobification. Look at the example. After the play, we went home. After the play is a beginning phrase. After we left the beach, we went home. After we left the beach is a beginning clause. Either way, we need a comma to separate that from the main sentence. Let's look at a few more ways that we use commas. We also use commas before an ending phrase or clause. Sometimes in a sentence, if you look for the main subject and the verb, you find them at the beginning. And after the main sentence, there's another group of words. If these group of words could not stand alone as a sentence, then they are phrases or clauses. They can be separated from the main part of the sentence by a comma. If you listen to the sentence aloud and you hear a pause, that is where the comma goes. Why does the group of words not have to stand alone as a sentence? Well, can you join two sentences with a comma? Never. But for any group of words that's less than a sentence, definitely, you use a comma. Look at the example. We went home at 6 o'clock, just before sunrise. That phrase, just before sunrise, is an ending phrase. It comes after the main sentence, which is we went home at 6 o'clock. Look at the second example. We left the beach after that, since our friends were already gone. Since our friends were already gone is an ending clause. It's an ending clause because if I took off since, our friends were already gone is a complete sentence. But when I add the word since, it makes it an ending clause. Another reason that we use commas is with direct address. So, when we speak to someone and address them, it's called direct address. We use commas to separate a direct address from the rest of the sentence. Look at the example sentence. Lee, are those sounds coming from you? I'm directly addressing Lee. Notice I paused after I said his name. And there's a second example where his name is at the end. Either way, I separate the direct address from the rest of the sentence. Are those sounds coming from you, Lee? Another reason that we use commas is in a date. For example, they were married on March 8th, 1997. When we write out a date, we use commas to separate the day from the year. We also use commas between the city and state. So look at the example. Houston, Texas. Many people get confused about whether or not punctuation goes inside of quotation marks, especially when there are question marks involved. These three thoughts may help simplify the issue. Question marks do the same job as word bubbles do in comics. They let the reader know that words are being spoken out loud by a person or character. If you draw a word bubble around these words, like in the example, the words in the bubble will end with some kind of punctuation. In this example, it's a question mark. Now, we usually don't use two punctuation marks in the same place. So, if there's already a question mark, we don't need an additional comma or period. Look at the example sentence. What's the problem? She asked. Notice the question mark goes inside the quotations. Or in the second example, she asked, comma, quotation, capital letter, what's the problem? Question mark, and then your ending quotations. Take a look at this example. Look at the first example sentence. She said, comma, quote, capital letter, you know I can see you, period, ending quotes. In this example, remember that quotation marks do the same job as word bubbles do in comics. They tell the reader that someone is speaking out loud. If you draw a word bubble around the spoken words, the words inside the bubble will end up with some kind of punctuation. We end the quote with that punctuation to show the end of the spoken words by using question marks. Look at the second example. You know I can see you, comma, she said, period. This is where the tag is at the end. In this example, the quote comes and then you have the tag. So in this example, you're going to change the period to a comma. Then place the quotation marks after the comma. In the third example, we have the tag, she said, in the middle. This is an interrupted word bubble. So if you split the quote, use a comma, not a period, to end the first part of the quote, and a comma before the continuation of the quote. It's all one sentence. Be sure and record these examples on your notes. Transitions are phrases or words that are used to connect one idea to the next. Transitions are used by the author to help the reader progress from one significant idea to the next. They help to show the relationship between ideas. The important thing to remember about transitions is that they all do different things. Here are some common transitions. Please remember that all of these are not equal. They have different meanings. When I'm adding on information, I can use words like also, in addition to, and finally. If I'm trying to show a contrast between information, I might use words like but, yet, however, or on the one hand. Take a look at this list. The important thing is to remember that each of these transitions has its own job. It has its own meaning.